What's up, everybody? Apparently, my my Stream Deck is not communicating with with OBS. I did not realize that for some reason. So I was trying to check the I was trying to change things, and it wasn't doing anything. So, anyways, I do actually have enough updates on things where I had to write them down so I don't forget. So we always like to start the streams off here. If you guys are new here, welcome. The point of these streams is to ask questions about your 3D printers, FDM printers only, no resin stuff. And you do that by typing !Q in front of your question. And the bot will pick it up. The bot should be working. Let me go ahead and do a test here. Test. And make sure it pops up so you guys can see how that works. It'll do a little thing. And hopefully, come on, bot, you can do it. You can do it. There we go. It'll reply back to you, say, hey, your question's been added to the queue. So it is functioning. So you guys can go ahead and answer questions while I'm giving you guys some updates here. So if you guys notice, I've been busy with firmware tasks. Also, I just realized Home Assistant did not pick up that I'm live. I'm wondering if YouTube changed something. Because if you guys notice, so the lights did turn on, but it does not think I'm live, which is really weird. I don't know why it's not doing that. So let me go ahead. I'm going to have to manually turn on my fun stuff behind me because something has changed here. So we'll go ahead and just kick it on manually. How's that? I know you guys like looking at all the fun stuff behind me. So anyways, firmware. So we now have the SKR E3 mini series firmware back on the site, and this is a paid download, and you get the full source code. So if you have the SKR E3 mini V1, V1.2, or V2.0, those are all in one package because they're basically the same board with slight modifications, so they all share the same config. And then we have the E3 mini on its own because it's a completely different processor. And we also added Ender 2 Pro support to that firmware. So people are actually buying this, and I really appreciate it because it allows me to figure out if we should spend more time doing firmware for these boards, because the reality is anytime I spend on firmware that's not for a stock control board, so we can, have people update their printers to, use our Easy ABL or other products, is time taken away from other things. So, but the good news is people are purchasing it, which means I'm going to keep spending time on it. And one of those things is like I did in the last release, which was adding another printer to that newer board. Now, I probably won't do anything for the older boards since those older ones are not being sold anymore and they weren't on the market for very long. But that is one of the things I'm going to be doing, is adding more things to it. So if you guys have a request for, one of these boards, then send it into us. At the worst case, I say, we're not doing that, or hey, I'll put on my list, and if I get time, I'll do it. The other thing is the V427 board from Creality. That is an aftermarket only board that does not ship with any printers. We also sell it, so that firmware is also in the paid firmware category, and we're charging $5. For $5, you get access to the downloads for 6 months. You get the full source code. And if you buy a 427 board from us, because that is a board we actually carry in addition to our Easy board, you get access to the firmware for that same 6 months. So just a little value add. If you guys do purchase the board from us, not only do you actually get technical support, unlike other sellers that are selling these products, but you also get the firmware as well as 6 months update. So basically, one thing I don't have is a renewal system. So it'll be like, hey, I'll just pay you guys $5. And just charge me every 6 months. We don't have a way to do that right now. I don't know if that's something people be interested in, or if basically they'd be moved on to another board by that time. But at the very least, we have this all up and running. But one of the things you guys should be excited about is the new Marlin 2.1 has been out for a little bit now. I have been playing with it, and I am now putting it into my queue to update our entire Unified 2 firmware to the new Marlin 2.1 code base. And one of the most interesting things is, and I have not tested this, but I will be, is they're saying now that on the Trinamic 2208 drivers and 2209s, I think it was mainly an issue with the 2208s. I can't remember with the 2209s because I don't have any boards with 2209s that are in standalone mode. So drivers that are in standalone mode, meaning like the 2225s, which are basically 2208s on the 427 boards, or the ones that come with some of these stock printers, Linear Advance just makes the driver panic and shut down in most cases, so we don't recommend people use it. And from what I'm reading in the firmware release notes on Marlin 2.1, it looks like they might have figured out how to get that running, and that's something I'm going to be testing. So, but this is a huge update. So this is a very big update in terms of code and time, but this is one of the things that everybody will get access to it. So the way we're going to be structuring Unified 2 is if it's, a board we sell, it will come with the firmware, because we're the only ones that sell our Easy board. That firmware is just always going to be, free, because we're the only ones that sell it. I don't have to worry about that. But boards like, the 427, where we sell it and other vendors sell it, and these other vendors typically do not support their customers who buy it, we need to get compensated for our time. So the good news is if you have a 427, you can toss us $5 and get firmware that's a lot easier to use. And hey, if you're putting it into a board that, or a printer that, is like the Ender 3, the Ender 5, the V2, we have a whole list of printers that are supported. And I'll just show you guys here. It saves you a hell of a lot of time. So $5 is not a big deal. So if we go to our help center here, and I'll put it in day mode just because it looks a little better. I know you guys like night mode. Our help center has night mode. I'm clicking an icon below my head on the bottom right. So you'll see here we have Big Tree Tech firmware. So these are all the different printer configs we have for these boards, and you can see it's listed with the model name, followed by what board it's for. So like, let's say you're running a SKR E3 Mini and a CR10, you can click here. There's details on how to get started, a picture showing the board, so it's very easy to know what board is it for. There's a picture right here, our VS Code setup guide, and when you click the icon to download it, it'll actually take us to the main website, which is where you purchase it. So this will actually show up under your download. So when you're logged into the site, this will say My Account. You can click there and then hit downloads, or you can hover and there's a downloads link there. If you're checking out as a guest, it'll just send you a link in your email, and that download will be valid for 6 months from the date of purchase. And if you get to the firmware from our main store page, there's also a link here with all the different printer models. So basically, if you have one of these printer models and you're using one of these boards and you don't want to screw around with running standard Marlin or wasting hours of time with Clipper, and you just want firmware that's set up and works out of the box, this is what these are for. And you can see right now we've got the 427, the V11220, and then the V3 for the SKR series. So, and if you purchase this board from us, so, and we do have more on the way, we're out of stock on them right now, it is included for free. So we have not changed the price on these boards. We do have a little bit higher price, but we are also providing technical support. We're also letting you know what processor you have. So this is a huge thing. If you go and buy this board from, you know, an Amazon seller or an eBay seller, you have no idea if you're getting the lower end 256K processor or the 512K. We literally open up every single package of these boards and check them, and then we label them appropriately so you guys know what processor you're getting. So that way there's no guesswork. If you want a 256K and 256K works just fine, or if you want to have a little more headroom to do more stuff on it, you can select it and you'll get what you purchase. There's no guesswork. And the firmware is included for free. So you'll get 6 months of updates, and all you have to do to download the latest, so if you see us post a thing saying, hey, Unified 2 is updated, all you do is go and click that download link again, and you'll get whatever the latest one is. So we have everything set up, so as soon as you hit that download link, whatever the latest version is, it will download. So, yeah, and you'll get the full source code with that as well. Speaking of source code, we now have a running GPL violation list and what printers are in violation. Here's an overview here of what companies have violations. There are definitely more out there. This is just what's been reported to us. I don't have the time to go out and seek out every single manufacturer because there's so many. But you can also report violations here. So if you are dealing with a company and they're not giving you the source code and you're entitled to it, you can go ahead and tattle on them here. And we'll keep your information private. You can see here, someone actually reported that G-Tech was not providing the firmware source code for the Mizar S. And what I did was I went to their website and I found their bin file. And just opening their bin file in Notepad++ and searching for the string Marlin, sure enough, sure as shit, they're using Marlin. So this customer is entitled to it. So this Mizar S printer, if G-Tech ever reached out to us and, hey, well, you guys want to review it? Absolutely not. You know, if we're aware that a printer is in violation, we are not going to do a video on it. You know, we're still going to do updates and firmware for printers that are in violation. But the whole thing is I want to make you guys aware in like other cases here where you're basically just getting, let me take a step back here. So this right here is a very good example of why source code, as well as all these Cobra ones. So these Ender 2 Pros that have these HC32 part number CPUs on them, that HC32 is also what Anycubic use in all these Cobra series. You cannot do any firmware changes on any of them without the source code. So if you need to change your thermistor type, you can't do it. If you want to change your motor direction, you can't do it in the firmware. If you want to change your E-steps and have them stick in the firmware level, you can't do it because most of these printers don't even have EEPROM support. So you can try sending the G-code command and it might stick, and as soon as you reboot the printer, it's gone. Another one here too is Ender 7. This one I actually found out they will not, like I have personally contacted them, they are basically just like, we're looking into it. That's all they've given it. It's still a violation, so it's on the list. You know, luckily the Ender 7 is something I've been able to do firmware for because it is an STM32 processor. But as we start seeing these like weird Chinese processors popping up, like these HC32s, if you have this HC32 processor in your Ender 2, this board, unless you're going to use it completely stock with no firmware modifications, you might as well throw it in the trash. You cannot update the code on this. No one has any information on how to update this or how to compile for it. My Ender 2 Pro did not have this. But this is one of the reasons why source code is important, because we literally have hardware here that is now basically useless if you want to do any sort of upgrades and modifications with, which on these lower end printers is what people do. Without the source code, you're screwed. So basically, if you have an Ender 2 Pro and you have this HC32, your option is return it back to them and buy a different printer, or spend more money and replace the control board with, like, you know, our EasyBoard V2 or, you know, one of Creality's other boards. But if you have this HC32 board, you can't do any firmware updates as it stands right now of me making this video. So because they won't provide the source code, they won't. I've got many reports from them. I've also requested it myself. Since I do have an Ender 2 Pro, they won't provide it. They will just guide you to a GitHub link to the firmware for the STM32 processor, and if you try flashing that on the HC32 board, it does not work. So yeah, that printer is on the shit list now. So if you guys do have other ones, make sure you submit evidence so, you know, I can actually back up our claims of why we're putting this on here. You know, this was one, and I redacted the guy's information. Here's the message from GTech saying that the source code is not open, cannot be available for download, except they're using Marlin, so they have to. So, yeah. Anyways, Tech Dad said on that roast meat chat, I saw you a picture. You said be careful with the filament shelf. It fell that night. I know. I've seen them fall. That's what I said. So yeah, there we go. So firmware updates. I'm working on the major update to 2.1. That's probably going to take me a couple months to get the 2.1 done because it's such a big update. It's going to take a lot of work on the back end. In terms of new stuff, I am working on the final revisions to the Ender 7 stuff. This, I forgot to check my, so this is a good example of why you should always periodically check your ABL sensors, especially the nuts. The one side here, you can see kind of warped up a little bit. Come on, focus. You can do it. Come on, camera. You might not be able to see in here. And I noticed it was a little bit higher on this side, and I went to the sensor, and basically the sensor was loose. And as soon as I tightened it down and ran another print, everything started working perfect. So periodically check your nuts and your sensors to make sure they're tight. If they're loose, it will throw the it'll throw your leveling off. So, but this is going to be what should be the final revision. So we got a nice tapered front on here. It just looks nice. We're putting these face down on our texture plates, so you get the nice effect on here. We've got the adapter plate that actually goes onto the printer, and then this screws on from the back. So basically you'll put the LCD in this housing, you'll screw this onto the back, and we're including all the hardware. This will go onto the front with the LCD, and then this plate here goes onto the back to hold this onto the metal housing of the Ender 7. So this is on the inside. You don't actually see this, but you will see the LCD screen. You can see the testing revision here sitting on the printer. And this is fully working. I actually successfully printed a nice print on here. So this is done in coax. I think this is their cobalt blue or navy blue. Hang on, the roll's right here. It's their navy blue. So it's actually printing very well. I have not done any mechanical adjustments on this printer. I've only changed the firmware. But I'm going to show you guys here. I did post a quick video, but it's always fun to show it doing stuff live. Let me turn this camera on here. Come on, arm cam 1. Oh wait, my stream deck isn't working. And let me rotate that. Hang on. Transform, rotate 180. I can show you guys what we got going on here. It's still in manual focus mode. So we have the EasyABL Micro on here. So you see that stashed right back there. This is not a final install. Whenever I do testing, stuff gets left loose, just in a way where it's not going to hurt anything. But it is working correctly. The Micro is going to be the only sensor that is supported on this. Also, in terms of our sensors, we won't be making the 12mm sensors anymore. We will only be doing the 8 and the 18 just because the 12mm were the smallest we could do for a while. And now that we have the 8, it doesn't make sense to keep carrying the 12. So if you guys are looking for a 12, whatever we have on the site, that's it. We do have stuff held back for warranty replacements, but other than that, we won't be restocking the 12 sensors. We're just going to go ahead with the 18 and the 8s. So, but you can see here, this is actually stashed right back in the corner. It doesn't interfere with anything, and we're going off the stock build volume, so it's like 250 by 250, I believe. And you see that's reading just fine there. I can even tell it here. Let's go ahead and do a bed level here. Then it'll home again, and then we're going to do a G29. So, but this has actually been printing a lot better with just the firmware update, not even the ABL. It's been printing pretty good. So, I did put crimp ferrules on all the power connections. So the main power connection, the bed, the ones going into the stepper motors, the stepper drivers, I should say. There's 2 separate stepper drivers on this machine. But I have not even tested the fast probing. This is just the standard 8mm second probing. that we have the firmware defaulted to. I don't know if this big bed with the stock Z setup will handle 15 millimeters a second. The probe will handle 15 millimeters a second, but I don't know if the physical bed will be able to move it as fast as possible. So I'm having this do just a M48 probe test here. So it'll tell me what my... Oh, I probably just messed it up by moving it. We'll see. I totally forgot. Don't move the printer while you're doing a probe test. It'll throw off the accuracy if there's any flex, which that bed will flex a little bit. So we'll see how badly I screwed it up. Maybe I got lucky. Yeah, that's way too high. See, I moved it. Let me run it one more time. Because I was getting like I think it was like 0.001 on here. So, but you can see the new LCD housing. This one's a little nicer. I got the little chamfers on here to make it nice. And the LCD is actually a little bit thicker here on the front, so the knob doesn't look like it's just sitting in the air. So, but yeah, don't move and bump your printer while you run M48 tests. It'll screw up the result. Just like I did here. And there we go. That's a lot better. So you want to be 0.01 or lower on your standard deviation. 0.05, I think, is what Marlin recommends for the max. But you can see there we've got 2 zeros. So this isn't a millimeter. So the accuracy this is getting is 0.008597 millimeters of repeatability. So plenty accurate for a 3D printer's bed leveling needs. So, all right. I'm hoping that we have the what's it called? Have this LCD kit ready to go by this weekend. That's what I'm shooting for, but I have to also edit a video, because if you guys have this printer, you do have to do some soldering, or you have us do soldering. So how the LCD kit's going to work for the Ender 7 is we'll have our kit with all the printed parts, all the hardware, our screws, nuts, and bolts, the LCD, the cables, and then the header that you will solder onto the board. Now, if you don't want to solder onto the board, when you're purchasing the kit, you'll check a box. It'll be a $20 upcharge. And what it'll be is we will put the order on hold. In your order confirmation, you'll then get our information on how to ship the board back. So you'll basically take your board out, send it to us in the mail. When we get it, we'll solder the header on and then ship it back out with the kit. So it's actually really easy to solder. I did a video showing how to solder it, so you guys can see, and then, determine if you want. It's not tiny pins. It's like standard 2.54 millimeter pins. I thought I had the bag of the headers somewhere around here. I might have moved them out to the shop. I don't know what I did with them. But it's one of the easier things to solder. So, but we will have that option. If you have an Ender 7 and you don't want to solder it, you can send us the board. You pay a little bit extra, and then we'll solder it, test the board, and send it back to you. So, all right, why not retire the 18 millimeter Easy ABL and keep the smaller versions? Because the 18 millimeter is very cost effective. It's very accurate. The thing is, the smaller the probes get, the more expensive they are, and people already bitch and whine about the price of the kits. So keeping the 18 millimeter around, which is what I use on most of my printers, because it fits just fine, it makes sense. We're talking at a cost level, we're talking anywhere from $12 to $15 a sensor difference that I pay my manufacturer to make the sensors of the 8 versus the 18. So the 8 millimeter costs us a lot more to make than the 18. So when I sell an 8 millimeter kit, I'm actually making less profit on it than selling the 18. But the 8 millimeter, for example, this printer here, you can't fit the 18 millimeter on here without it colliding with the frame because it's such a tight package. So the default is, if you have a printer that can fit the 18 millimeter, just get the 18 millimeter. But if you have a printer that has to have the smaller probe, or you have a hot end carriage design that you want to use a smaller one, we have that option. So it doesn't make sense to keep the 12 round, because that's, I'm basically going to take the money we were putting into ordering 12 millimeter sensors, and we're going to put them into ordering 8 millimeter sensors. So keep it simple. So the only reason we had the 12 out was because that was the smallest we could get at the time. Now we're able to get 8 millimeter sensors made that are very accurate. And I don't know if you notice, this is probing on glass. sensors like, you know, Prusa's Pindaprobe, which you can buy separately and people put on their printers, they will not work on glass. That is working on the actual glass plate and it's sensing the glass. That is not sensing the metal underneath it. It's actually sensing the glass. So that's a huge advantage our sensors in general have over a lot of other ones, is they're not inductive type. They're actually a high performance capacitive type, printing on glass beds or printing on stuff that's not metal, you know, like, what is it, the Garolite plates that people like to use for nylons. It will sense those and it will actually give you a good leveling result, whereas inductive type probes will not sense those type of materials. So you're not going to get a super accurate bed mesh, because if it does read, it's probably reading the bed below it. So you're not actually reading the surface you're printing on. And that's why we keep with the capacitive ones. You know, it is more work because we have to work with these sensor manufacturers to get them more accurate than these normally would be used for their typical industrial applications, because most of the industrial applications, they're just detecting if something's there or not for the most part, or if they're being used for positioning, you know, they can be off, you know, 0.5 millimeter. So, but we're working with these companies to make probes that are accurate within, you can see, 0.008 millimeters or better, you know. But anything under 0.01, you're just bragging at that point. But you know, we like to go for the best stuff. So I'm not done with updates. I got 2 new things for you DIYers. I am getting more DIY stuff in. Some of the stuff just showed up today, and I'm actually really excited about these because I'm going to be replacing some of the crappy ones I bought from Amazon years ago that are not very accurate. So these, if you guys are not familiar, these are what are called, typically referred to as DHT22 sensors. This is a temperature and humidity sensor all in one package. So I literally just got these in about 30 minutes ago. DHL just dropped them off. And these, and this is what, and in general, if you guys are buying these type of sensors, this is what you need to look for. And don't go by the product photos, because every single one I bought off of Amazon has come with a knockoff of this guy here. So this PCB doesn't really matter, okay? This is just to make it easier to connect. So you can see here, this has a capacitor and a resistor on it, and you've got your data, your VCC, and your ground. So your data, your 3.3 to 5 volt, your ground. Now, what you want to pay attention to if you're using these DHT sensors is, you see this says AS air on it. Let me zoom in here. See how this actually says AS air 2302, and if you look into the little grate there, it actually says it on the PCB. This is a high quality thermistor and humidity sensor. And they're pretty damn accurate. The problem is when you go type in Amazon or eBay DHT22, even if it has the little picture of this on the front, you're probably going to get a knockoff. So that's one of the things, you know, like I do with all the stuff here, I'm not going to sell you guys crap. So I have had so many of the generics just fail, or they're off by like 5 to 6 degrees and you have to calibrate them. These are going to be a hell of a lot more accurate. So like I use a couple of these cheap ones in my humidors. I'm actually going to go replace these this weekend with these genuine ones because I want the accuracy a little bit better. And then in terms of driving them, let's see here. And in terms of driving them, we are going to get ESP32s, but these are probably my favorite ESP8266 board, are these D1 mini style, and these are the 4 megabyte package ones. So again, I've been through the ringer with a lot of this DIY stuff. You'll see stuff like this sold on like Amazon or eBay, and it's kind of a crapshoot whether you get the 1 megabyte version or the 4 megabyte version. I have some here driving LED projects that I cannot update the firmware over the air because the memory size is too small, and I forget, and I try to update them over the air, meaning over the Wi-Fi, and then it ends up bricking the device and I got to go plug into it and fix it. So these are the 4 megabyte D1 mini style boards. They come with an assortment of headers here. So you've got like the stacking type headers, you've got the regular 2.54 little pin headers, and then even ones to mate up with those pin headers to go to the PCB. So just for an example, like I could literally do a video showing you guys how to make a temperature humidity sensor with these 2 parts and a couple of wires and something to power this over USB. These 2 things, you can now make yourself a smart humidity and temperature sensor. I don't know if you guys would be interested in seeing that, but this is the kind of stuff I like doing. This is the whole reason I bought 3D printers in the first place, was for making electronics projects like this. Like, oh, you know, I'm going to throw this in my fridge and keep an eye on the temperature. And if the temperature gets too high, I want to get like a message on Telegram or something, or a text message or an email because, you know, if the temperature is going too high, maybe someone left the door open or maybe my compressor failed, which I have had happen to me. I had a fridge in my garage. It was like a side-by-side with a freezer. We kept like extra meat and stuff in the freezer. And luckily on the fridge side, I only had like beer and soda and stuff. But it saved like these little things. This is like $25 worth of parts, and it saved me hundreds of dollars worth of food. So that's the kind of stuff that's pretty cool. So I could easily do a little video showing, hey, let's design a case in Fusion to hold the sensor, to hold the D1 Mini. Here's how to do the connections. Here's your different options for software. You want to use ESP Home. You want to use Tasmoda. Here's how to do it, that kind of stuff. So I don't know if you guys would like to see a little basic project like that. It's kind of like a stepping stone to get you into kind of, you know, smart things. In terms of automation and building your own stuff, combining the 3D printing where we can make the enclosure and the housing and the mounting brackets and stuff with the electronic side of things. So, but yeah, I'm trying to source good stuff because I have been buying these kind of things for years. And this was one of the things that was most annoying, is buying these off like Amazon, eBay. And then I get them and it's like, God damn it, I got clones again. So if you guys buy this stuff from us, whatever you actually see in the picture, just like everything else we sell, this is what you get. So, and I had the option to order the clone ones. They were about 25% cheaper. I said, no, I want the good shit. I don't want the generics or copy chips. A lot of the vendors refer to them as copy chips. They're knockoffs. They're inferior. So, anyways, that's all I have. Yeah, so I went over the firmware. So if you guys are looking for firmware, those are out now. I do have, is anybody here interested in us continuing to do firmware for the Big Tree Tech SKR2? We had a DIY firmware out for that. I still have all the files for it. I can repackage it up and retest it, make sure it's all still working, and have that as like a paid download option. I don't know if that's even worth me spending time on. I don't know if any of you guys who are watching have them and would be interested in a firmware for that particular board. But, you know, there is a demand for the, you know, these easier to use paid firmwares where somebody like myself who knows what they're doing is making it easier. This opens up a possibility of, hey, if there's boards that we don't sell, if people are willing to pay us for our time to make firmware for it and then keep it updated, you know, that's a possibility that we can do for boards that we don't even sell, because the whole point is making it easier, you know. Apparently I'm talking too much. So, anyways. Okay. Let's go into the questions here. So that's all my my notes. EJ says, where the heck did you mount the EasyAble control box to the Ender 2 Pro? I mounted it on the side with one of the screws that holds the plastic to the extrusion. I actually, let me pull up the video because I have a video here. We're also getting ready to launch the Ender 2 power supply replacement kits. And you can actually see it in my video. So I show from start to finish how to actually get to it. And I know you can see it in here on the video here. So this is raw footage. You guys are seeing a sneak peek of my raw footage. It's so terrible. Can't remember if I started on the left side. Here you go. So you can see right there these two screws here that go into the plastic right by the arm. That's where I have mine. So I just put these holes are like a 4mm hole, so the M4 screw, or M5, I think it's M5. It was a tight fit, but I just threaded it into the plastic. This is where I mounted it. I've got the power wire just coming up here, and then the sensor wire going down, and the Z-stop wire. So that's where I put on my Ender 2 Pro. Because there's really not much room in the inside the control box, which you'll probably see here. So yeah, I have, literally this is footage that's raw on my computer that I shot, showing you guys how to take this all apart. Because what we're going to do, since these power supplies are proprietary, we're actually going to be replacing the PCB on the inside here with a Meanwell one, and that's what this recording is showing you how to take this out, and then going over the Meanwell, getting its PCB out, and then we're going to go and we terminate some connections and do that. But I won't go off on a tangent. I was starting to go off on a tangent there. So, yeah, I just put it on the side there with that existing hole, or the existing screw, since that screw is not structural, it's just holding the plastics on. So anyways, all right, so I see I got a double question here. Solomon says, Ender 3 Pro Y-axis layer shift issues. I replaced the belt, added tensors. I still have issues. How would you tell if it's a stepper motor or something on the control board? So I would start by checking your VREF. So the VREF is on that particular printer on the Ender 3 Pro, whether you have the 32-bit or the 8-bit board, it's physically done by adjusting little potentiometers on the control board. I'm seeing if I have a Creality control board laying around here. I have an Easy board in my drawer. Here we go. So on the Creality control boards here, and most other control boards that do not have drivers that are, you know, smart enabled, you see these little X looking things here. These are called potentiometers. So you see they actually have them labeled on here. This is the Ender 2 Pro board. You see X, Y, Z, E. It looks the same on the other ones. You'd want to go ahead and adjust the VREF for your Y driver, because what could be happening is your current could be set too low. So the 422 is going to look almost identical to what I just showed you there. Go on our channel and just type, you know, or just go on YouTube and type TH3D VREF, and you'll see a video showing you how to adjust it. And it's on a older CR10 board, but the process is the same. It's pretty easy to determine if turning the potentiometer clockwise is going to increase your voltage or lower it, and counterclockwise increase or lower it. Some boards are different. But basically, you want to take a reading off it and bump it up by like 0.1 volts and see if the layer shifting goes away. The other thing you can also check is see if your slicer is telling the acceleration to be set too high, which means it's jerking the printer around and telling it to move faster than it can. I think Cura and Prusa Slicer both have options to control the acceleration, and I believe they're on by default in some versions because it was causing issues on like the larger CR10s like the S4 and the S5. So yeah, that's something to check out too. So rule out all the software issues, but it could just be as simple as you need to give it a little more current, and if it's like only shifting a little bit, bumping the current up just a tiny bit will probably resolve that issue. After you do up the current, just keep an eye on the motor after you're running a print for about 30-40 minutes. Put your hand on it. If you touch, like the motor, it's normal for your motors to be warm. Now, if they're too hot, like we're talking like 70, 80 plus C, like you put your finger on it and you're like, that's probably too hot and you need to back it down a little bit. But most of your motors are going to run warm, and it's perfectly normal, especially like ones that are run really warm is if you're running like a geared extruder. Your E-motor will run warmer typically with a geared extruder because it's driving the motor harder. But that's what I would do. If I had that printer here and someone's like, hey, Tim, this is what I have, and it's right in front of me, I would check the VREF. I would first slice a file with my slicer, with one of my profiles, and see if it does the same thing. The other thing, and I totally forgot about this, is you might also just have, if it's occurring at the exact same spot in the print or roughly the same spot, you could have an issue where you're either not getting enough or you're getting too much cooling with your layer fan, because I have had prints where something curls up and the nozzle physically hits it, and technically upping the VREF might give it enough power to overcome and not lose steps, but you could also then be knocking the print off the bed. So there's a couple different things. The two main things I've seen where you have step loss is either the nozzle physically hitting the print, which is I've had it happen, but it's rare. I've more often than not have had issues where the VREF for that driver is too low, whether that's X, Y, or Z. So Pagan Wizard is saying, I've seen many posts on social media where people are having issues with your easy firmware for the Ender 5 Plus. They're resolving their issues by using the firmware for the CR10S. People are probably doing something stupid, and they should contact our support. There's a lot of people that think they know what they're doing, and they try to do something dumb, and they think it works, but they're probably creating other issues. They should contact our support. We actually will help people out with technical support. So if they're using our easy firmware site, and that means they have an easy board, they can contact our support. We actually do tech support. So you should be using the config for the printer you have. Just because some random other person that's not with our company tells you to do a certain workaround, you shouldn't be doing that. The only reason, if there is a problem, which I'm not aware of because I literally have the easy board on my 5 Plus right here, and I'm using our firmware that our customers use, someone's probably doing something dumb. All right, Julio Reyes says, I've got Ender 6 years with a Pats fan cooler and a micro Swiss hot end. What are my temps? When I'm printing ABS, my bed's at 100, my chamber gets about 50, and I've had multiple clogs. So I'm running the same ABS temp. I'm actually literally running an ABS print right now. And I'm running, my chamber gets about 50 to 55 C with the enclosure. If you're having clogs, they might actually be clogs. You're probably getting a jam, and that usually means your hot end fan is not keeping the printer cool enough. So I'm using the 40 millimeter 24 volt fan we sell on here. I make sure to check to make sure it's not clogged with dust, because I do have pets. I'm also in a garage. And I have not had, knock on wood, I have not had a single jam on that machine. And I'm also using the stock hot end, but I am using our bimetal heat break. So I do have an all metal hot end, just like your micro Swiss would be. So the other thing you could try, if you've ruled out, like if you have a Noctua fan on there, that's probably why it's clogging. I don't know what fan you're using, but if you have the stock fan and the stock fan's not failing, the stock fan does cool it fine. If you have our fan and it's not failing, our fan is fine. It's literally what I'm using. I've got probably over 1,000 hours on that printer at this point. But yeah, it could either be heat creep, or it could just be that you have a defective heat break, meaning like the machining quality isn't that great. Clogging or jamming, I'm gonna use the term clogging interchangeably, even though it's not technically correct. Wait for the neckbeards in the comments to tell me how wrong I am. But anyways, the film is not coming out. I've not had ABS jam up on me unless my hot end fan has died. That's actually how I lost my one micro Swiss. On my CR10 Mini, I was printing ABS. The hot end fan died because it was a stock one. I was being lazy. I didn't replace it. I should have, which is why I now replace all my fans when I get new printers. And it got heat creep and jammed the ABS all the way up to the neck of the hot end. And I was like, this is going to be a pain in the ass to get rid of, so I tossed it. But if you have like a defective heat break, meaning it's not machined smoothly, you could be having your filament where it's hanging up on the inside. It's kind of hard to look at that once you have filament in it, but it's not impossible. An easy way to rule it out, if you know your fan is good, is put the stock hot end back on there and, throw some tubing in there and see. Your tubing's not going to hold up very long with ABS temperatures. If you have the stock tubing, if you have a tough tubing, you'll be fine running it for a while, because that's what it's for. But it would give you a test to see if it's the hot end that's the problem versus something else. Let's see. Damon says he's just got our newest firmware for the 427 board. I had a question. Your older firmware had a fade height set to 10. I know it's 2.5, set it to 0. Because ABL fade causes problems, so we set it to 0. There's been a lot of, it's a feature that seems cool and seems helpful, but it's caused more issues than it's solved. So if you want to use it at your own risk. There's a reason we have it set to 0, which disables it. And that's because we've had, including issues here, where fade just doesn't, it skews the print too much, or it smooshes the layers. Had a guy, I think either last week or the week before, where he was having where his first couple layers are switched, and it was because of Z fade. So, yeah. Someone just typed the word giveaway. It's ! giveaway to get the URL, or just go to giveaway.th3dstudio.com. Also, I'm just leaving the giveaway open for the month, so if somebody is watching the replay, you guys can go ahead and just enter it. So Nadir says, I've got a problem. Seems to be backlash on my Y of the printer. It's the G-Tech Me Creator 2. Oh man, I had one of those. Those were so bad. I have visible gaps on the infill on the Y, and some of my circles are a bit off. Yeah. If I remember, that printer used those like inline spring tensioners where they have like a spring in the center and they got two arms that come out and they grab the belt. And I remember having issues with that. I can't remember, but yeah, I mean, have you replaced the belts? Because you could also just have worn out belts. That's an old printer. So if those are the original belts, that might be something as simple as, hey, change your belts out. Because belts are a wearable item. Which I feel like I should make like a little video about talking about what is a consumable on a printer, because there's a lot of parts that you may not think are, consumable or wear items, like your printing bed. Your bed's a wearable item, whether it's a glass plate, whether it's a sticker, whether it's a flex plate. Those are all consumables, okay? And those are ones you usually go through pretty quickly. Like filament, pretty obvious, it's a consumable. But here's the thing. Your fans are all eventually going to wear out, no matter if you get ours or you get the Creality ones. The difference is it going to last 3 months, 6 months, or years? Eventually, they're all going to fail. But stuff that will probably need to be replaced every couple of years, and which is what we're doing now. Now we have tons of printers here that have a ton of hours on them, and they're getting up there in age in terms of use and just how old they are, is the belts. The belts start stretching out, they start wearing out. It's a relatively cheap thing to do. We carry lengths of belt, so you just buy the belt and swap it out. And I've been very surprised at how much print quality improves on a printer, because you don't really notice it. It's just a gradual fade in quality. And you change the belts on, you're like, holy crap, this thing's printing great again. So, and typically we change both belts. So if I have a problem on my X belt, I'm going to also change the Y belt, just because if the X is worn out, the Y is probably also worn out, or it's getting to a point where it's going to have issues. So I've already got the machine down for maintenance. I might as well just replace both of them. You know, a meter of belt is only a couple of dollars. It's not worth it. So, let's see. So yeah, hopefully that helps. I would probably replace the belts and just try to get it. I don't know if that machine has tensions on it, but like that was a kind of a crappy machine to begin with. I maybe look on Thingiverse and see if anybody's made any belt tensioners for it, but I'd be willing to bet maybe that belt's also just wearing out. So that's the other thing too, is they wear out, they aren't as rigid, so you're gonna get more slop in them, or backlash in this case. Tibbs says, I've got an Ender 3 427 board. I'm trying to get the 50-watt heater cartridge working. The hot end temp shoots past 200 all the way to 240 before tuning fails. Any suggestion on what's wrong? Check and see if you have the right voltage cartridge. So if you got a 50-watt heater from us recently, the newer versions we have now have it lasered on there, but things can get mislabeled. The easiest way, whether it's our heater or somebody else's, check the resistance on the heater cartridge, and then you can do a calculation using the formula called Ohm's Law. And I literally use this website. It's great. It's called ohmslawcalculator.com. You know, just to give you an idea, so that's an Ender 3, I think you were saying. Was it Ender 3 at 427 boards? It's 24 volts and a 50 watt. Your resistance should be right around 11 to 12 ohms of resistance. So, you know, let's say you take a reading and you're like, oh, I've only got 6 ohms of resistance. Well, that's going to be pulling 4 amps and 96 watts, which is going to overshoot. The other thing you could do is manually, like if your ohms are all correct, it could just be that your board is being very picky about how it's triggering if it's failing. And you can manually play with the PID values. I've had to do that a couple times, and then usually what I've noticed is that once I manually set like a very conservative PID, it'll then go through the PID loop and it'll get it all tuned in. You know, but the other thing is check. You might also just have a defective cartridge too. Like the heater cartridge in general are just a mass-produced item, and it's possible to have variation. So it's not uncommon to have like a 50-watt heater cartridge read in anywhere from like 10.5 ohms up to 12 to 13. It's going to be in that rough ballpark. Same thing with like the 40-watt heaters, or just heaters in general. I actually had a heater. It was the 30-watt heater from E3D. I had a customer of mine. He kept blowing boards out. And he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. But we ended up finding out that when his printer heated up, once it got to a certain temperature, the expansion inside the heater cartridge was enough to make the actual heating element inside the heater cartridge touch the outer wall and energize the block. And then it was sending 24 volts back into the thermistor lines and frying his boards. So yeah, you can have defects and stuff. So, and it can happen with anybody, whether it's, you know, our heater cartridges, the stock ones, E3Ds, you know, slices, you know, things are not always perfect. So, but yeah, hopefully that gives you something to go on. I would check your heater cartridge, because maybe you just have a heater cartridge that's defective and it's, the resistance is too low, because if it's too low, it's going to overshoot like crazy. And I wouldn't recommend using it. But you know, if that's all you have right now and you're trying to get prints done, you could always like manually tune the PID by changing the PID values until you get to a point where it's not overshooting like crazy. So, but might be as simple as maybe you also bought a 12, or you got a 12 instead of a 24, because if you put a 12 volt heater cartridge on a 24 volt printer, it's going to pull some power and it's going to go up very fast. All right. Dimitri K, have any thoughts about any Any thoughts to support or sell Voron? Absolutely not. That is way too much work, and they're changing too much stuff. We do have other stuff in the works that are Core XY projects, like the Mercury 1 kits. We're very close to having that put on my plate so I can start playing with it. But Tor and Peter have been working on the Mercury 1 kits for what, over a month now? 2 months almost? Tor? I know you're in chat. But they've been working really great and producing some really good prints. If you guys are not familiar, the Mercury 1 kits are like an open source Core XY conversion kit for your Ender 5 and Ender 5 Plus. And I've spoken about this too. Once we get that locked in, we're kicking around the idea of basically instead of taking like an Ender 5, but making our own frame and basically throw the Mercury 1 kit on the top of our custom frame, our own board, all our hot end, that kind of stuff. But that's not going to happen before the end of the year. We got too much other stuff going on, but it is something we're working on because I would like to see us come out with a kit that doesn't take you 50 freaking hours to build, like the Vorons do. So, I mean, the Vorons are good printers. They're just very time consuming. So if you got nothing but time and you got, over $1,000 to throw at a printer, go and build a Voron, but it's a lot of work. Me personally, I'd rather take a decent printer, well, Ender 7's but like Ender 6 or whatever, I'd rather take a decent printer and upgrade it and, spend a lot less time getting a working machine. So, but that's a completely different market. I don't think people should be comparing Vorons to any other printers that are, like pre-built or, partial built like the Krallies. There's not it's not a direct comparison. And, the joke is, if you guys know, how do you know if somebody has a Voron? They'll tell you. They're like the vegans of the printing world. So, all right. Let's see. Neo Project, we're going to do an upgrade stream of the Tina 2. I have another Tina 2 here. I don't know. I shelved that because that is a very low priority in terms of everything else going on. That's why I want to have this done. So, let's see. David, on the other 7 kits would be a lower price option. I have like 5 LLC. I'd like to support your work on the 7. Or maybe a digital option with STL link to the mount. So you're gonna need the actual header part too. So maybe we'll sell the header separately, but we might make the STL available. I'm not sure. We'll have to see. At the very least, we're gonna have the full kit. So, but you got to remember too, like selling the stuff. Like you're basically asking me, I like your work, but I basically want to give you $1 for hours and hours and hours of work. That's basically what you're telling me right now, because I make the money on the kits selling the prints of the parts that we designed and a little bit of margin on the LCD screen. So honestly, man, it's kind of insulting. And considering I've probably put almost 30 hours into this printer over the last week and a half. So yeah. Or you can do it all yourself. It took a lot of time. All right. I think Julio will be the last question here. I think, maybe. Hang on. Let me reload my question file. Come on, man. Do it for the exposure and experience. Exposure and experience don't pay the bills, man. I might have accidentally wiped out these 2 questions here. So I'll just pick them out of the chat. So let me answer Julio's really quick. He said, I just installed the Bondtech DDX3 with a Mosquito Magnum. I like my Mosquito Magnum. Do I think it's a little bit overpriced? Yes, but the quality is good, so it's a premium hot end. I have it on my 5 Plus. It's been great, but it is very expensive. I think someone was telling me, it might have been Steven, Mr. Lightspeed. I think he told me that they're including the thermal paste now because he showed in my video. I could be wrong, but he told me that they changed something because I was like, this is like a $280 hot end. You guys can't throw some thermal paste in? Like, come on. Let's see. You have install instructions, how to change the VRF manually 0.7, but I have the easy board. This means I can change it with the firmware on your screen. Absolutely. So I don't know what it would be, but in general, when you're tuning, if you have a pancake motor, I would recommend starting around like 500 to 600 milliamps, which is on the setting on the LCD screen. So That's what I would do. And just basically what you want to do, and this is in general, whether it's our board, whether you're manually adjusting your VREF, you want to give your stepper motors enough torque where they don't lose steps, but also not too high, because if you go too high, you won't lose steps, but your motor will run too hot, which will cause other issues. And if you go too low, you lose steps. So you're trying to find the happy medium. It's better to start lower and go up and then monitor your motor temperature. And basically, once you hit the sweet spot where your motor's not blazing hot, and you're not losing steps, that's what you should have your VREF set to. And it can vary on printers. So, Mike V's asking about the Mercury 1 kit. Are we going to do a video when we build it? Yeah, that'll probably be like a live stream and have everything put together. So if we do the Mercury 1 kits, our plan is to have everything, the whole thing, like we're printing everything for you. We have all the hardware. That way we can make sure that, one, the parts are all printed correctly. We're going to do them all in ABS. And we're also aggregating all the STL files, because right now, if you guys try to do the Mercury 1 kits, you're having to go to multiple places, including random Discord servers, to get files. So we're putting that all into one location. And I think what we'll be doing is making a full kit. Like, here's everything. We've printed everything for you. We've sourced all the rails, the hardware, the screws, everything. Just follow the directions and put it on your printer. So, but we will have the files available. They're actually already on our GitHub. If you guys poke around our GitHub, we've started putting stuff up there, but it's not done. We're just putting that there because our complaint was, or I should say Peter's complaint was, if you get the kits right now, there's not a very clear-cut way to assemble it. There's a lot that you're hunting around and asking questions in Discord to figure out how to do it, which is not, it's not very user-friendly in my opinion. So we're trying to fix that. All right. But yeah, so I do want to get the multi-mount working on the Merc kits. Mike, I know you've asked me this multiple times. Please stop asking. When we get it done, it will be posted. We will communicate that. So I know you're excited, but like, we are a very small team here, and unfortunately, with how the economy is going and everything, I don't have the funds to hire more people. So my time is limited. My other guy's time is limited. We only have so many people to do stuff with. So that's just the reality we're at right now. Let's see. Carlos says, I'm planning on experimenting with 256 microsteps. Any advice? I have done that in the past. My conclusion was it didn't really provide any, there was no difference between the interpolation. I'm assuming you're messing around with on Trinamic drivers. Like our EasyBoard V1 and V2, you can actually run the drivers in native 256 stepping, and I did not see any improvement. If you guys are not familiar with what I'm talking about, but on the Trinamic drivers, this is kind of their claim to fame, and also how they run quieter, is they'll take that 1/16th step rate coming from your processor and kind of upscale it. You know how you have, like, you know, TVs that'll upscale 1080p content to 4K, and it'll, you know, it won't look as good as native 4K in terms of picture, but it'll be better. The Trinamic drivers do the same thing, but except when we're talking such minute, small step amounts on these printers, you're not going to see the difference. I played around with it because I could have, you know, I was thinking about, okay, well, let's roll just a firmware update out where people can just enable this and get better print quality, but there was no difference. I did so many test prints side by side of the 1/16th with the interpolation and native 256, and there was no difference. And the thing I found is, because you go to 256 of a step, you lose a lot of torque. So it creates a whole nother set of issues, meaning it's just not worth it. Was my thing. So you can do your own experiments. This was probably about 2 or 3 years ago to see if it was even worth doing, but I found it created more issues and there was no difference in print quality. So, and we'll end on Wesley's comment here because we're over 5. We try to keep these to an hour. And Wesley's asking, what do I think of the laser kits for the Ender 3 and the like? My thing is, your machines, your making machines, whether that's your printer, your laser, you know, whatever you've got that you use to make stuff with, when you start making it do more than one thing, it now becomes, instead of a master of one, it becomes a master of nothing. And the other thing too is, especially with the lasers, and you guys notice we did do 2 laser videos on the Atom stacks, and I did comment about the having enclosures. We did purchase a I think Comgro was the brand. It's the same kind of materials like the Creality enclosures, like the grow tent type ones, as I call them. That's even more of a concern with the printers, because your stuff is now sitting much higher up, and at least with like the atom stack lasers we reviewed, they have a shield around the laser that makes it much harder to actually expose your eyes to that. I do not like putting lasers on printers. If it's a 3D printer, it does 3D printing. Doesn't mean you can't do it. My opinion, which is, everything in this video and this stuff, these are just my opinions. I'm just sharing my knowledge and stuff I've been through and conclusions I've come to. And my thing is, get a machine that does stuff well and make it do that one thing well, because you start doing, like the modular systems where you're popping heads on and off. You're adding all sorts of additional points of failure. You're adding more slop into the system, especially with like the modular stuff, because now instead of your, your system being like rigidly mounted, now it's on this whole platform that can move and shift. I'm not a fan of the multi stuff. You guys see here, there's actually a laser cutter sitting right there too. I also have a CO2 laser, which I'm going to be doing some upgrades on. I wanted to get them done this week, but I got to take care of the Ender 7 stuff first. So anyways, that's it. I think we're going to give, I don't know where my bag of, he knows. He's already looking at me. I haven't even said anything, but I think he knows. I think he knows the pattern. It's about an hour, and now he keeps an eye on me. There's the ears. Are you excited to get your brother soon? Did you guys know we're getting him a brother soon? We're gonna have a puppy on the stream soon, as in like 24 days soon. At the end of the month. So, Remo, can we sit? Can we sit? Come on, sit. Okay. Touch. No. Sit. Touch. Good boy. There we go. There's a pretty boy. So, anyways, yep, I will see you guys on the next one. I hope you guys learned something. Hope this information was helpful. If you guys want to support us, we do have, like I said, now we do have the firmware. You can support us if you guys have a board that we do firmware for. There is also a general donation page set up on our website for the Unified 2, so if you want to help us out, the bottom line is if we can start getting revenue flowing from the firmware, we can hire additional people to free up my time so I can spend more time on firmware, spend more time on doing other stuff. So that's the goal. So anyways, I will see you guys on the next stream. I appreciate you guys watching. And as always, happy printing. I'm going to figure out why my stream deck isn't working.